Hello everyone, I'm back again for another update. I am now hiking through Shawvers Run Wilderness. This area has no trails. I found my own way up to the summit of this mountain in the wilderness area. There is a very faint trail. It is possible to get over to Potts Mountain from here. If I continue in this direction, the ridge crosses this valley and hooks you up to Potts Mountain, probably only a relatively minor climb. And that's Potts Mountain right there, but I'm not going to go that far because it's already 4:30 in the afternoon. I got to start heading back. It took me 3 hours from home to get up to this top of this mountain, which is right here in front of me. Let me see if I can clear this lens. It looks blurry. So yeah, there is this faint trail that takes you along the summit here. And there is really no trail to get you up here. No well-defined trail. I basically followed paths that the animals made, basically. So this is an exclusive video of Shawvers Run Wilderness. Which encompasses this entire ridgeline I'm on, part of Potts Mountain over in that direction as well. Huge amount of acreage. And I'm starting back down this mountain toward home. Today, we are going into the third week of March. Today is Monday. And temperatures have definitely dropped today. It's in the 40s. And the wind is blowing pretty briskly. Up here especially. So what I'm going to talk about today is more about one of the biggest scams in history, which is all this talk about runaway global warming has set in for the Earth. Because we've had 2 unusually mild winters in the eastern U.S. especially. And a meteorologist that I've talked about recently posted that snowfall in the Midwestern U.S. has plummeted in the last 50 years. And that is due to the activities of man. It's evidence that snowfall is definitely becoming a thing of the past in this region. Basically, in our lifetimes, we're never going to see another blizzard and another cold winter. It's the past, that's it. Winter as we know it is going the way of the dinosaur. He especially believes that places like Virginia are not going to see much snow again. That's it. It's done. Global warming has set in, and our winters are going to just be non-existent anymore. It's going to be just 6 months of fall every year. Is that really true? I know this person's a meteorologist. He knows a lot about weather, and he's a good forecaster. I respect him. I met him in person. Well, I wanted to verify what he said about snowfall in the Midwestern U.S. decreasing sharply in the last 50 years. I did some research, and I picked a city in the Midwest that would probably be a good city to pick, being St. Louis, Missouri. And I looked back in the snowfall records for St. Louis. Let's go back to 1884, I believe. So they have over 100 years of snowfall records to look through annually. And I also looked at several other places. I looked at Minneapolis. I looked at Chicago. And looked back and examined the snowfall records for these cities going back, and all three cities go back to the 1800s. Unfortunately, St. Louis is missing records from the decade of the 30s, which I really wanted to look at, because I feel that the 30s were the warmest decade. Of the 20th century, and even up till now. What I found was, yes, snowfall has decreased in the last 50 years. Yes, that is correct. You go back 50 years, it puts us back in the middle of the 70s. The 70s were a very snowy decade in the Midwest. In St. Louis, there were two back-to-back years of record snowfall in 77 and 78. Two consecutive years of snowfall just under 50 inches. So they got nearly 100 inches of snow just in those 2 years alone in that city. So has snowfall steadily, and I emphasize steadily, declined in the last 50 years in St. Louis? Has it steadily declined due to the activities of man? Has the decline been through the activities of mankind? I feel the answer to that question is no. Reason being, I computed the average snowfall decade by decade. The 70s were the snowiest decade on record for St. Louis. There was a drop in the 80s, a significant drop from the 70s to the 80s in snowfall. And the 90s, the drop continued. There was over 50% decline in snowfall in St. Louis, Missouri. Between the decade of 70s and the 90s. However, it began to creep back up in the 2000s and 2010s. So in the last 20 years for St. Louis, snowfall has actually slightly increased over the last 2 decades. It still has not gone back to the levels of the 70s, but there has been a slight increase since 1990 in snowfall for St. Louis, contrary to what. So that, though it's true that the last 50 years snowfall has declined, look at this huge blowdown. Yeah, it's leveled off. The decline has leveled off since 1990 in snowfall. There has really been no decline in St. Louis overall for the last 3 decades. That's why they say the last 50 years. They don't say the last 30. They say the last 50 because the 70s were the snowiest decade. Even for Chicago, the 70s, Chicago got pounded with snow during the 70s. Record amounts of snow. Almost every year was above average in snowfall that decade. So you could easily say, yeah, go back 50 years, there's been a decrease. It's kind of misleading because you go back 30 years, there really has not been a decrease anymore. Most of that decrease occurred between 1980 and 1990. The 80s, it went down, it dropped pretty significantly for snowfall during the decade of the 80s. So from 1990 onward, snowfall overall has been pretty much stable. There has been no real decrease since then, up until the last 2 winters. Now, looking at Minneapolis, it's all over the media that Lake Minnetonka had a second earliest ice out on record, March 13th. And they're attributing climate change to that as well, man-made global warming. Got articles all over the media about early ice out dates. That lakes aren't going to freeze anymore. Ice fishing is going to become obsolete soon. What they don't talk about, however, somebody's been up here not too long ago. Look at this. Chewing tobacco. And it's empty. I have it sticking in my pocket just to remove this litter. Yeah, somebody's been up here not long ago. So these early ice outs, they don't talk about last year, 2022, 2023 up there. Lake Minnetonka had one of its latest ice outs on record. And Minneapolis recorded 90 inches of snow last year. And of course, this winter they're only barely 15 inches, I think, so far, but we still got April. So, they're basing all these assumptions on this one really warm winter, which I feel was manipulated. Now they're saying the hurricane season is going to be a doozy. We're going to have all kinds of hurricanes this year because of La Nina coming on. I do not agree with it. I feel it's going to be a below average season because they've used up most of the heat in these oceans in prior years to induce hurricanes to form where they should not have. They've stolen heat from the Earth's budget. The sun is in a max right now, and maybe a little bit of that heat might get restored enough to create a couple more storms this year. But they are rapidly going through the heat reserves of the oceans to form these storms artificially. And as I said in my last video, they do it with satellites beaming energy down at the cloud tops, heat energy to enhance convection, to try to create hurricanes out of what would normally be just tropical disturbances. And they're going to go into that mode around May 1st. Though the hurricane season normally begins June 1st, they start May 1st because if they can get something going before June 1st, they're going to blame that on global warming, saying that hurricane season's going to be longer due to global warming. I am now starting down off this mountain. So you can see Peters Mountain across the valley straight ahead. And that wind is just roaring through here. I feel my long-range prediction is going to be the effects of Tonga are wearing off. So from this point on, winters are going to start getting colder again. Now, how successful they'll be next year at keeping the MJO in the warmer phases remains to be seen. We have gotten colder here in spite of the MJO being in the warmer phases. We are getting a cold snap coming in starting today, lasting potentially all week. Because the MJO isn't the only thing that influences the weather, there are other factors. But yeah, I feel they're going to keep trying to continue to keep the MJO in warmer phases even next winter and possibly beyond that. And many meteorologists and the general public are buying into global warming now for 2 mild winters in a row for the eastern U.S. There's reports saying Arctic ice is going to be gone in 10 years. It's going to be all melted. Although right now, the ice is actually above the mean for 2023. That 23-year period, the ice is running above average right now, actually, overall. Following like there's a little bit of an animal trail here that will take me down through this thicket. As I said before, there are no trails up or down this mountain. I basically have to find my own way back down. Rely on my internal compass to get me back here, back home. I got about 2 hours, 2.5 hours before dark to get down off this thing. But yeah, this is pretty steep right through here. A lot of thick undergrowth to plow through. I'm gonna go this way. It looks like there's a corridor here. That's going to be it for this video. Hope you found this trek through Shawvers Run Wilderness enjoyable.